So here's one for you. There's a bit of optionality on this one. What's the one thing above all others you love or loathe about less?
I love the fact that less, and by less, there's no canonical way of teaching less, or I love that less puts a priority on thinking and teaching thinking tools. It's in a way, it's a framework that almost forces organizations to think. And the training is all
Mm-hmm.
about, or at least how I deliver it, and I know how you deliver it, it's all about really thinking and thinking about thinking. And so that's my favorite part of less. And so I'm not going to say systems thinking or queuing theory because that's too easy. I think the real aspect of less that I love is the emphasis on thinking and owning your own decisions,
Mm-hmm.
and not just saying, oh, you should have one product backlog, but really understanding why you should have one product backlog from a systemic perspective. And so that's probably my favorite part of less. And you said, which part do I loathe?
Well, if it was an option, you could choose love or loathe. If you want to do both, then that'd be
Um,
brilliant.
and you mean specifically about the less community or the less framework?
I think you can take it as broadly as you would like.
Wow. What do I loathe? I think I'm gonna pass on this one because yeah,
That's all right. It
there,
was an
there, there
option.
are
It was
things
an
that I do
option.
loathe, but I'll keep that for off the record between you and I. Yeah. Uh,
Noted. I won't push you on it. But one thing I found interesting, the thing you love about less is the thinking aspect. I kind of feel that relates to your elevator pitch for less as well, because you can't go into this multi-year journey and think that you're not going to be able to avoid
yeah,
thinking.
and yeah, exactly. And I don't even, I shy away from even calling it less adoption in the companies I work in. I don't even use really the words less because I don't want something that they can point to and say, oh, that thing didn't work. Less didn't work for
Mhm.
us. I want them to think through all the decisions, own them from first principles, and say, well, yeah, it didn't work. We decided, eyes wide open, we're going to try that thing, and that thing didn't work. And that thing could be one backlog, one product owner. Um, but I know the temptation of calling the thing less gives you the organization a one that one's incredibly painful to say, just it didn't work for us, we need to try something else, or it wasn't too much too fast, or wasn't pragmatic enough. And so I actually don't use the words a less adoption or we're adopting less, and so every decision, especially from an organizational design, is run through the people who own the transformation, and they decide if they want to do the thing or not through thinking about it.
Mhm. Do you find that when you try not to use the word less or mention any particular framework, that people do ask, or it naturally emerges through the
Yeah, and I
usage or
don't
through
know
trying it?
why we as humans need to label things. And I think there's some. I'm not a social psychologist, but we need to say we're doing CrossFit. We need to say we're going vegan. We need to say we're part of this tribe. We need to say we're trying less. So I have found that even even when I've shied away from something, people need to latch onto a brand. I don't know. I don't know the origins of this. I've seen that across multiple disciplines, but yeah, even when I shy away from less, they want to call it something. And if it's not less, they'll figure out some fancy internal name to call the change effort.
I wonder if is it a communication or an efficiency thing? Like we unless we can attach a label to something, then we find it more difficult to
Or
talk
maybe it's
about it.
novelty. We need to say, like, we're I'm trying paleo. I, I, I don't know. I don't know.
But
Or
I
maybe it
think
does communicate a lot.
if
Maybe it
it's
does communicate a lot with one word. Maybe there isn't an efficiency element of it.
yeah, I'm not sure. I mean, it is. I mean, I find it fascinating. I really do. I've got a feeling that I read something about it recently. I'll go back to a book, and I'll if I if I can find it, I'll let you know what I find. But when people who are, say, if they're ill with an undetermined illness, right, they know the symptoms and they got in treatment for it. But some people tend to say, as soon as they get a name for it, it kind of makes them feel better. It gives them a way to talk about it a bit more. And I don't know if it is any way. This labeling is something inherent within us.
Yeah, I don't
We
know.
label everything. So to not label something maybe feels a little bit strange. One thing we always try to do was just basically to call it our operating model. For example, at Deutsche Bank, we'd always say
Mhm.
this is the operating model. And then say, which bits of it are less? And we're like, well, we understand less, and we've looked at it, and we've based the operating model on a lot of the ideas. But this isn't less. This is our way of doing things right
Yeah,
now.
yeah. But the flip side of that is it allows something to point a finger at. And the same thing exists for a really
Yeah.
charismatic change agent, which I think is a very dangerous thing. Like, it feels nice if they say, "Oh,
Mm.
Ahmad's so great," he's just, and the problem with that is, I'm not great forever, and eventually they say, "Oh, he just screwed us up," he didn't do blah blah blah, and so having
Mm.
a brand name that underpins a transformation, or having a really high flying type coach that everyone likes to be around, that also creates the same danger. So I always try, having learned that in the beginning, as I went through my own ego trip, I wanted to be the person that um, everyone said is like, things are so much better after he came. And I realized that's a very dangerous and short-lived
Mm.
thing. You really want to be to, the secrets of consulting, Gerald Weinberg, you want to be the person in the background, that's almost through inception, giving people ideas, and really almost getting none of the credit for themselves. And I think it's much more
Yeah.
effective. And it's not just an
Yeah.
ego, it's not like some sort of Buddhist Sufi thing. It's ultimately, for the longevity, is much better.
Right, they say one of the quotes which has got me through like my I don't know the last like 5 or 6 years of my career was the idea that you can achieve anything if you
Yeah.
don't mind not
It was
taking
just
credit for
hard.
it. And the moment I came at peace with that, or became more at peace with that, I think that I instantly became a happier, more engaged and aware
Yeah.
person. Um, and what you're saying about the charisma side of things, there's a
Mhm.
book, Humble Leadership, by Edgar and Peter Shine. And then there they talk about the different types of leadership and the different types of relationships we need in modern organizations. And they do say that when the relationships are what they would call level one, when they're professional, there's not a lot of psychological safety, there's not a lot of trust, very professional doctor, doctor patient, lawyer, client type relationships, then change initiatives will succeed or can succeed when you have those types of relationships, if you have a very strong charismatic leader to keep everyone corralled and
Yeah.
heading in the right direction. But the moment that leader no longer exists, what you need is actually people who can work at a higher level of relationship where they can be honest and open and
Mm.
begin to solve their own problems. So I think that's kind of, I think being that personality driven change is very, very dangerous, and something that I know that I was absolutely the victim of, or the
Yeah.
instigator of, over the years. And it's been a more recent change for me to kind of
It's
get over
hard, and it's
myself a little bit.
hard because it's not only hard from an ego standpoint, it's challenging from a commercial standpoint. So we're saying that we need to be in the background and working through other people, but then we also need to earn as independent consultants. So how do you balance that whole
Mm.
working through people and not being in the limelight, and then getting a contract or extending a contract, etc.? And what I have found is that the more at least for me, the more I work through people and seek less of the attention, the longer my gigs run for, the more I get suggested, etc. So it's counterintuitive, and I, learned that the hard way.
Uh, well,
Yeah,
it's a lesson you're not going to unlearn, I suppose. Now, not well, unless something happens to make
exactly.
to initiate that unlearning.